The massive ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like dark clouds blocking out the stars. There were hundreds of them, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with alien metal that seemed to drink in the light from distant suns. On Earth, every radio telescope, every satellite, every communication device suddenly crackled to life with the same message. The voice that spoke was cold, mechanical, translated by computers into dozens of human languages at once. Primitive inhabitants of the third planet, the voice began. You will listen, and you will obey. We are the Galactic Council, rulers of 10,000 worlds across this galaxy. We have come to offer you the gift of civilization. In the United Nations building in New York, Secretary General Chen Martinez sat at the head of a long table surrounded by world leaders. Every screen in the room showed the alien fleet hanging in space like a sword over humanity's head. The translated voice continued its speech, and Martinez noticed that several delegates had gone pale with fear. Your species has reached the primitive stage of space travel, the alien voice said. This makes you eligible for inclusion in our great empire. You have 7 of your solar rotations to make your choice. Surrender completely, destroy all weapons, and accept our rule. Do this, and your people will be allowed to live as servants in our vast domain. The message then shifted to show footage from other worlds. Burning cities filled the screens. Creatures that looked like giant insects fled in terror as alien soldiers marched through their streets. Proud civilizations reduced to ash and rubble. World after world, all showing the same pattern of conquest and defeat. These worlds chose to resist, the voice explained with what sounded like satisfaction. They learned that resistance is futile. They learned that the Council's power cannot be challenged. You will learn this truth as well, or you will share their fate. Ambassador Vexthul of the Hegemony spoke directly to the camera now. He was tall and thin, with purple skin and eyes like black holes. His species had been the first to join the Council willingly, 3,000 years ago. Since then, they had helped conquer countless worlds. Look upon your primitive weapons, Vexthul said, his voice dripping with contempt. Look at your small ships that barely reach your own moon. Look at your divided nations that cannot even make peace among themselves. How can you hope to stand against the might of the galaxy itself? More footage played. The Council's war machines rolled across alien landscapes like unstoppable metal mountains. Their ships turned entire cities to glass with single shots. Their soldiers, wearing armor that made them look like walking tanks, cut through enemy forces like wheat before a harvester. We have destroyed civilizations that existed for millions of years, Vexthul continued. We have brought order to chaos, unity to division, peace through strength. Your choice is simple: join us willingly or be crushed beneath our feet. The message ended with coordinates for where Earth's surrender would be accepted. The alien fleet remained where it was, waiting, confident that no rational species would choose destruction over servitude. In the UN building, silence stretched for long moments. Several delegates whispered prayers in their native languages. Others stared at the screens showing the alien fleet, calculating impossible odds. The president of the European Federation looked like he might be sick. Then Secretary General Martinez began to chuckle. It started as a small sound, barely audible in the quiet room. But it grew louder, more confident. Other delegates turned to stare at her, wondering if the stress had finally broken their leader's mind. "Ma'am?" asked the Japanese representative carefully. Are you all right? Martinez tried to control herself, but the laughter kept bubbling up. She looked around the room at the worried faces of humanity's leaders, then back at the screen showing the alien fleet. I'm sorry, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. It's just, did you hear what he said? Did you actually listen to their demands? The British Prime Minister frowned. They want us to surrender or be destroyed. I fail to see what's amusing about genocide. No, Martinez said, holding up a hand. Listen to what they really said. They've conquered worlds that barely knew fire existed when they found them. They're proud of beating up farmers and philosophers. They think we're impressed by their ability to crush civilizations that probably never invented gunpowder. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. New York bustled with life as always, but she knew that in military bases around the world, preparations were already beginning. Preparations that had been planned for decades. They have no idea what they're dealing with, Martinez said softly. They see our primitive weapons and small ships and they think they know us. They see our divided nations and assume we're weak. She turned back to face the room and her smile was sharp as a knife. Gentlemen, ladies, we need to send a response, something appropriate to the magnitude of their offer. The Chinese representative looked nervous. Secretary General, surely we must consider their demands seriously. They have superior technology, superior numbers. Do they? Martinez interrupted. Superior technology? Says who? Them? Superior numbers? We'll see about that. She walked back to her chair and pressed a button. Within moments, her aide appeared with a camera crew. Martinez smoothed her hair and straightened her jacket. Are we broadcasting to the alien fleet? She asked. Yes, ma'am. All frequencies, all languages, including the one they used. Martinez nodded and looked directly into the camera. For a moment, she tried to compose herself, to put on the serious face that the situation seemed to demand. But then she thought about the alien ambassador's speech, about his proud boasts of conquering peaceful worlds, and the laughter bubbled up again. Ambassador Vexithul, she began, struggling to keep her voice steady. Thank you for your generous offer. We've considered your terms very carefully. She paused, bit her lip, and then the dam burst. Laughter filled the room as Martinez doubled over, tears streaming down her face. Around the table, other delegates caught the infection. The Secretary of Defense started chuckling. The Russian representative snorted. Even the usually serious German chancellor cracked a smile. You want us to surrender, Martinez finally managed to say. Because you defeated some planets that barely knew fire existed when you found them? Because you conquered civilizations that never learned to make war? She wiped her eyes and leaned forward toward the camera. That's adorable, truly. You're very proud of yourselves, aren't you? 3,000 years of expansion, and you've managed to beat up every peaceful species in the galaxy. Congratulations. I'm sure that took real skill. The laughter in the room grew louder. Martinez held up a hand for quiet, but she was still grinning. Here's the thing, Ambassador. You seem to think we're like all those other worlds you've conquered. You see our divided nations and think we don't know how to organize. You see our primitive weapons and think we don't know how to fight. Her smile faded slightly, becoming something colder. You're wrong on both counts. We know exactly how to organize when we need to. And as for fighting, well, let's just say we've had practice. Lots and lots of practice. She leaned back in her chair, the camera still rolling. So here's our response to your generous offer. No, we decline. Feel free to try to make us change our minds, but I should warn you, we've been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. The transmission ended. Around the table, the laughter slowly died away as the reality of what they'd just done sank in. They had just declared war on a galactic empire. Martinez stood up and straightened her jacket again. Gentlemen, ladies, she said calmly, I believe it's time to make some phone calls. We have 7 days to get ready for company. The alien fleet hung in space for 3 days, waiting for humanity to come to its senses. Their sensors showed the usual signs of panic from primitive worlds facing conquest. Radio chatter increased dramatically across the planet. Ships launched from various ports and stations. Military units moved into position. Commander Zachtel of the Hegemony Navy reviewed the intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. The humans were responding exactly as expected. Their primitive minds simply couldn't grasp the hopelessness of their situation yet. Look at this, he said to his tactical officer, pointing at the data streams. They're launching their crude chemical rockets as fast as they can build them, probably trying to evacuate their leaders before we arrive. The tactical officer, a younger hegemony male named Vorth, nodded eagerly. Sir, our scouts report massive movement in their asteroid belt, probably miners fleeing their posts. Cowards, Zachtel sneered. Just like all the others. They talk brave for a few days, then reality sets in. But as the 4th day dawned on Earth, something changed. The Council's long-range sensors began picking up energy signatures that didn't match their expectations. The chemical rockets they'd been tracking were moving faster than chemical propulsion should allow. Much faster, sir, Vorth reported, his voice suddenly uncertain. The energy readings from those human vessels. They're not showing chemical signatures anymore. Zachtel frowned and moved to the sensor station. The readings made no sense. According to their intelligence, humans were barely capable of fusion power. These signatures suggested something far more advanced. Sensor malfunction, he declared. Recalibrate and scan again. The recalibration confirmed the readings. Whatever the humans were using to power their ships, it wasn't anything in the Council's databases. Then Luna Base came online. The first sign was a sudden spike in energy readings from Earth's moon. Vorth's console lit up with warning indicators as massive power sources activated across the lunar surface. Sir, something's happening on their moon, Vorth said, his voice rising with alarm. I'm reading weapon signatures. Massive ones. The main screen flickered and showed Luna Base as it truly was. What the humans had always called their research station. revealed itself as a fortress that would have impressed the Council's best military architects. Weapon batteries emerged from hidden underground silos. Shield generators sparked to life, creating a protective dome over the entire base. "That's impossible," Zachtel whispered. "Our intelligence said it was a small outpost with maybe 100 scientists." "Sir, I'm reading over 10,000 life signs on that base," Vorth reported. "And those weapons? They're not primitive at all." As if responding to their attention, a communication beam lanced out from Luna Base toward the Council fleet. A new voice filled their bridge, speaking in perfect hegemony standard. "Council vessels, this is Colonel Zhang of Luna Defense Command. You seem surprised. Did you really think we built a moon base just to collect rocks?" More surprises followed in rapid succession. Across the solar system, installations that had been dismissed as minor mining operations or research stations began revealing their true nature. The asteroid series opened like a flower, showing massive shipyards hidden beneath its surface. Europa Station's ice drilling platforms rotated to reveal weapon emplacements. The abandoned stations around Jupiter's moon suddenly blazed with activity. "This is impossible," Zachtel said again, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Our scouts surveyed this system for months. These installations weren't here." On the main screen, Mars began to change. What the Council had catalogued as small human colonies and terraforming experiments proved to be something else entirely. Massive doors opened in the planet's surface, revealing underground facilities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Ships began emerging from these hidden hangars, ships that were definitely not primitive chemical rockets. The lead vessel was enormous, nearly as large as a Council dreadnought, but built along completely different design principles. Where Council ships were elegant and streamlined, this human vessel looked like it had been built for war from the ground up. It bristled with weapon batteries and defensive systems that the Council's computers couldn't identify. "Attention, Council fleet," came a new voice, calm and professional. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding the UES Indomitable. I believe you wanted to speak with us." Zachtel felt a chill run down his spine. The voice belonged to a female human, but there was something in her tone that reminded him of the old warrior races the Council had exterminated centuries ago. "Something cold and patient and very, very dangerous, Admiral Chen," he replied, trying to regain his composure. "I am Commander Zachtel of the Hegemony Navy. You are in violation of Council space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The human's laughter was nothing like the Secretary General's had been. This wasn't the laughter of someone who found the situation amusing. This was the laughter of a predator who had just cornered its prey. "Council space," Admiral Chen repeated. "This is our solar system, Commander. You're the ones who are trespassing." More human ships emerged from hidden bases throughout the system. Each one was different from the others, as if humanity had spent years experimenting with different designs and technologies. Some were fast and sleek, built for hit-and-run tactics. Others were massive and heavily armed, designed to slug it out with much larger forces. A few seemed to phase in and out of normal space using some kind of technology that made the Council's sensors go crazy. "You wanted to know why we laughed?" Admiral Chen continued. "You've been conquering worlds that never knew war, Commander. Peaceful species that built beautiful cities and created wonderful art and spent their time trying to understand the universe. The human fleet began moving into formation around the Council vessels, not attacking, not yet, but positioning themselves with a precision that spoke of extensive training and preparation. We're different, Chen said. We've been at war with ourselves for our entire history. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords and arrows, with bullets and bombs, with fire and poison and every terrible thing we could imagine. We've turned killing into an art form. Zachtel looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at the tactical displays in growing fear. The human ships had surrounded them completely without seeming to move in any threatening way. It was masterfully done. We knew this day would come, Chen continued. We've been watching your expansion for decades, tracking your ships, studying your tactics. We've seen how you operate. You show up, demand surrender, and blow things up when you don't get it. It works great against philosophers and farmers. The Indomitable moved closer to Zachtel's flagship, its weapons trained but not powered up. Yet. But here's what you didn't understand about us, Commander. When we heard you were coming, we didn't panic. We didn't pray to our gods or write sad poetry about the end of our civilization. We did what humans do when someone threatens our home. Zachtel's throat felt dry. What? What did you do? Admiral Chen's voice carried a smile that would have given nightmares to a creature that needed sleep. We got ready for war. Suddenly, the space around the Council fleet was full of human vessels. Not just the obvious warships, but converted civilian craft, retrofitted mining vessels, even what looked like passenger ships that had been hastily armed. thousands of them appearing from hiding places throughout the solar system. "You see, Commander, you made a mistake," Chen said. "You assumed we were like all the other species you've conquered. You thought we'd be reasonable." The tactical display showed Zactel something that made his blood freeze. Every single human ship was powered up and ready for battle. Their weapons were all different. Their designs were chaotic, their formation looked like barely controlled chaos. But somehow, impossibly, they were coordinated. They moved like parts of a single vast organism, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be. "We're not reasonable," Admiral Chen said softly. "We're human, and you just made the biggest mistake in your species' history." Zactel reached for his communications console with a trembling hand. I need to contact my superiors," he said. "By all means," Chen replied. "Tell them everything you've seen here. Tell them that humanity is awake now, and tell them we'll be coming to visit very soon." The transmission ended, leaving the Council fleet alone in space, surrounded by thousands of human warships, wondering how they had walked into a trap that had been waiting for them since before they were born. The Council's response came exactly as Admiral Chen had predicted. Unable to accept that a primitive species had outmaneuvered them, they decided to make an example that would bring humanity to its knees. Intelligence reports showed a human colony ship heading toward Proxima Centauri, apparently trying to establish a new settlement beyond the Council's immediate reach. Fleet Admiral Korthak of the Dominion personally took command of a battle group to intercept it. 12 of the Council's finest warships, each one capable of reducing a planet to rubble, moved to destroy what their sensors told them was a defenseless civilian vessel. "This will show them," Korthak declared to his assembled captains via hologram. "When they see their colonists burning in space, they will understand that resistance only brings death." The human ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, shaped like a great metal cylinder with spinning sections that provided artificial gravity for its passengers. According to Council intelligence, it carried 50,000 humans seeking to start a new life among the stars. The perfect target to break human morale. Captain Silith of the destroyer Knight's Edge was the first to get within weapons range. Her ship was a sleek predator, built for speed and striking power. She'd destroyed dozens of civilian vessels during the Council's expansion campaigns. "Target acquired," she reported. "The vessel shows no defensive capabilities. No shields, no weapon signatures. They're not even trying to run." "Excellent," Korthak replied. "Open fire on my command. Make sure some of them survive long enough to send a message back to Earth." But as the Council ships closed in, something strange happened. The human vessel's identity beacon changed. Instead of reading UCS colony ship Mayflower, it now displayed UES Magellan Deep Range Explorer. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Yethra from the flagship, "the human vessel is broadcasting a new message." "Ignore it," Korthak ordered. "Fire all weapons." 12 Council warships opened fire simultaneously. Enough firepower to crack a moon lanced out toward the human vessel. Energy beams that could melt through any known armor. Plasma torpedoes that burned hotter than stars. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. The weapons struck the Magellan dead on and accomplished absolutely nothing. "Report," Korthak barked as his weapons officer stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Sir, all weapons impacted the target, but their shields are still at full strength." "No, wait, that's not right." The tactical officer's voice rose with confusion and growing fear. "Sir, their shields are stronger now than they were before we fired." On the main screen, the human vessel hung in space completely undamaged. Its hull gleamed like polished mirror, reflecting the dying energy of the Council's attack back into space. "Impossible," Korthak whispered. "No shield technology can do that." A new voice filled the bridge of every Council ship. It was calm, professional, with just a hint of amusement. "Council vessels, this is Captain Marcus Webb of the UES Magellan. Thank you for the demonstration. Our defensive systems are performing exactly as designed." Captain Silith checked her sensors frantically. "Sir, I'm not reading any shield generators on that ship. I'm not reading any defensive systems at all. It's like the hull itself is absorbing our weapons." "That's exactly what it's doing," Captain Webb replied, apparently monitoring their communications. "Adaptive matter technology. The more energy you pump into our hull, the stronger it gets. Please feel free to try again. We're always interested in field testing." Korthak felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest. Genuine fear. But he was a fleet admiral of the Dominion, conqueror of 100 worlds. He would not be intimidated by one human ship. "All vessels, concentrate fire on their engines," he ordered. "If we can't destroy them, we'll cripple them." Once again, the Council battle group opened fire. This time they focused all their weapons on the Magellan's rear section, where conventional wisdom said the engines would be most vulnerable. The result was the same. The human ship absorbed every joule of energy and converted it into something that made its hull glow with an inner light. "You're really not getting this, are you?" Captain Webb said, and now he sounded genuinely amused. "Let me give you a demonstration of how this is supposed to work." The Magellan's hull suddenly reconfigured itself. Sections that had looked like cargo bays opened to reveal weapon systems that made the Council's arsenal look like toys from a child's playroom. The ship didn't just have guns mounted on its surface. The entire vessel seemed to be a weapon. Every surface capable of projecting destructive force. "Captain Silith," Webb said, addressing the Night's Edge directly, "your ship has a crew of 423. They all have families, children, people who love them. I want you to remember that in the next 30 seconds. What happened next redefined the Council's understanding of precision warfare. The Magellan fired a single shot, just one, that passed through the Night's Edge's shields as if they weren't there. But instead of destroying the ship, it surgically removed every weapon system, every engine, every piece of equipment that could be used for war. In 30 seconds, the Night's Edge went from a predator of space to a helpless hulk drifting among the stars. But every life support system was intact. Every crew member was unharmed. They were alive, but they were out of the fight forever. "Medical emergency on the Night's Edge," Webb announced. Several crew members seemed to have fainted. "Probably shock. Don't worry, we'll make sure rescue ships can find you." Korthak stared at his tactical display in horror. The human ship had just demonstrated a level of surgical precision that should have been impossible. To disable a ship without harming its crew required split-second timing and computer control beyond anything the Council possessed. "How?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How what?" Webb replied cheerfully. "How did we target your ship's systems without hitting your crew? How did we penetrate your shields? How did we know exactly where your weapons were installed? Admiral, we've been studying your technology for decades. We know your ships better than you do." Another Council vessel, the heavy cruiser Iron Talon, suddenly opened fire on the Magellan without orders. Its captain had apparently decided that overwhelming firepower was the answer. The human ship's response was swift and brutal. Multiple weapons systems locked onto the Iron Talon and began systematically dismantling it piece by piece. First the engines, then the weapons, then the shield generators. The process took exactly 45 seconds, and when it was over, the Iron Talon was nothing but a command section with life support. "Captain Veltar of the Iron Talon," Webb said calmly. "Your crew is safe, but your ship is now scrap metal. I'd recommend staying put until rescue arrives." The remaining Council ships began backing away from the human vessel. But Webb wasn't finished with his demonstration. "You know what the really funny part is?" he said. "You came here to make an example of us. You wanted to show humanity what happens when you resist the Council. Well, you're right about one thing. You are going to send a message back to your people." The Magellan began moving toward Korthak's flagship, and the fleet admiral realized with growing horror that his weapons were useless. Everything he'd learned about space combat in 3 centuries of service was worthless against this one human ship. "The message you're going to send," Webb continued, "is that you found a ship full of human colonists, families with children, scientists, teachers, people who just wanted to build a new life among the stars, and you decided to murder them all just to make a point." The Magellan was close enough now that Korthak could see details on its hull. What he'd taken for decorative elements were actually weapon systems. The entire ship was a work of art, but it was art designed by people who understood war better than anyone in the galaxy. "But you failed," Webb said. "Not only did you fail to harm a single human civilian, you lost most of your battle group to that same civilian ship, and now you get to go home and explain to your superiors how 12 of the Council's finest warships were defeated by one human vessel that they couldn't even scratch." Korthak felt his tactical officer's hand on his arm. "Sir," the younger officer whispered, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal." "The Admiral is thinking about running away," Webb observed. "That's probably wise. But before you go, I want you to understand something. This ship, the Magellan, it's not a warship. It really is a colony vessel. Those 50,000 people aboard, they're really farmers and teachers and scientists." The human captain's voice turned cold. "This is what our civilians can do to your military. Imagine what happens when you meet our actual navy." Korthak didn't need to imagine. His sensors were already showing him the answer. Human warships were dropping out of hyperspace all around his position. Real warships this time, built for only one purpose. The Magellan looked like a pleasure craft compared to these newcomers. Admiral Chen sends her regards, Webb said. She's on her way to have a chat with the rest of your fleet back at Earth. I'd hurry if I were you. She gets cranky when she's kept waiting. The surviving Council ships fled toward the edge of the system, their crews finally understanding what they were truly facing. Behind them, the Magellan resumed its journey to Proxima Centauri, its passengers settling back into their routine as if nothing had happened. The news of the Magellan incident spread through the Council fleet like wildfire. What should have been a simple demonstration of overwhelming force had become a humiliating defeat. Fleet Admiral Korthak's report was met with disbelief, then anger, then growing concern as more ships confirmed the story. Grand Admiral Thexion of the Council Combined Fleet decided that enough was enough. The humans had been lucky, nothing more. No primitive species could stand against the full might of the Galactic Empire. He would personally lead the main assault on Earth and crush this rebellion before it could spread to other worlds. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure, he ordered from the bridge of his flagship, the Destiny's Edge. All vessels, all battle groups, we advance on the human homeworld at once. The armada that assembled was the largest military force in recorded galactic history. Over 3,000 ships from every member species of the Council, ranging from fast destroyers to massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets. The combined firepower could sterilize entire star systems. As they prepared to enter hyperspace, for the final jump to Earth, Thexion addressed his fleet commanders. The humans have shown more resistance than expected, he admitted. But they are still primitives fighting with stolen technology. Once we reach their homeworld, once we begin orbital bombardment of their cities, they will surrender. No species has ever withstood the full might of the Council. The fleet entered hyperspace, confident that they would emerge victorious. 3 hours later, they dropped back into normal space at the edge of Earth's solar system, ready to begin the final conquest. What they found waiting for them changed everything. "Sir," reported the sensor operator on the Destiny's Edge, his voice cracking with disbelief. I'm reading massive fleet formations throughout the system, thousands of ships." The main screen lit up with tactical displays showing the human defensive positions. It wasn't just a fleet, it was a fortress. Ships were positioned at every Lagrange point, every asteroid belt, every moon and planet. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. "How many vessels?" Thexion demanded. "Sir, I'm counting over 15,000 confirmed contacts, but some of these energy signatures, they're not like anything we've seen before." Admiral Chen's voice filled the Council flagship's bridge, calm and professional as always. "Grand Admiral Thexion, welcome to Sol System. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, and I'll be your opponent today. I hope you brought enough ships." Thexion steadied himself and activated his communication system. "Admiral Chen, you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." The human's laughter was cold as vacuum. "Outnumbered? Admiral, you brought 3,000 ships to attack our home. We've been preparing for this fight our entire existence as a species. Did you really think we'd only bring 3,000 ships to defend it?" The tactical display updated as more human vessels revealed themselves. Ships that had been hiding, in asteroid fields, stations that had looked like mining platforms, vessels that seemed to materialize out of nothing as stealth systems deactivated. The count rose past 20,000, then 30,000, then stopped counting. "Impossible," Thexion whispered. "No species has that many ships." "We do," Chen replied simply. "We've been building them for 200 years, ever since we first detected your expansion. Every human colony, every orbital station, every asteroid mining operation has been contributing to this moment." The Grand Admiral studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The human fleet wasn't arranged like any formation he recognized. Instead of neat battle lines, they seemed to be positioned in overlapping layers of coverage that created killing fields throughout the system. "You still cannot match our firepower," he declared, trying to project confidence he no longer felt. "Can't we?" Chen asked. "Computer, show the Grand Admiral what he's really facing." The space around the Council fleet suddenly erupted with new contacts. Human ships dropped out of stealth, emerged from hyperspace, rose from planetary surfaces where they'd been hidden. But these weren't just more of the same vessels. These were ships the Council's computers couldn't classify. Some were massive beyond belief, mobile shipyards that could construct entire fleets. Others were so small they barely registered on sensors, but moved with impossible speed and agility. A few seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, phasing in and out of normal space at will. You see, Admiral, Chen continued, while you were conquering peaceful civilizations, we were doing something else. We were perfecting the art of war. Every human conflict, every battle we've ever fought has taught us something new about how to kill efficiently. The Council fleet began its advance, but the humans didn't wait for them to get into range. The first wave of human attackers came, from everywhere at once, ships dropping out of hyperspace inside the Council formation, vessels rising from the solar system's debris fields, fighters so small and fast that point defense couldn't track them. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a systematic dissection. The humans fought like nothing the Council had ever encountered. Their ships coordinated with inhuman precision, but their tactics were pure chaos. Vessels would ram Council ships. At full speed, their hulls designed to survive the impact and keep fighting. Others would sacrifice themselves to create openings for their allies, showing a disregard for individual survival that terrified the Council crews. Sir, the humans are using kamikaze tactics, reported the tactical officer. They're deliberately ramming our vessels. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Thexion ordered, but it was too late. The human fleet had already adapted to the Council's attempts to avoid them. Ships that looked crippled would suddenly spring back to life, attacking from unexpected angles. Vessels that appeared to be retreating were actually repositioning for flanking attacks. The Council's superior firepower meant nothing when the humans refused to fight a conventional battle. They struck from ambush, used the system's asteroids and planets as cover, and seemed to have contingency plans for every possible situation. Admiral, Chen's voice came over the communication system again. You wanted to know the difference between you and us? You conquered farmers and philosophers. We conquered ourselves. A Council dreadnought exploded as human fighters somehow penetrated its shields and detonated charges directly against its hull. The massive ship broke apart in a cascade of fire and debris. For 10,000 years humans have been fighting humans, Chen continued. We've learned every dirty trick, every desperate strategy, every way to turn weakness into strength. We've had wars that lasted decades, conflicts that consumed entire continents. Another Council ship died as a human vessel appeared directly in front of it, emerging from some kind of dimensional fold. The collision destroyed both ships, but the humans seemed to consider this an acceptable trade. We've fought with honor and without it. We've used poison gas and biological weapons and nuclear fire. We've made war against our own children and watched our cities burn. We've done terrible things in the name of victory. The Grand Admiral watched his carefully ordered fleet dissolve into chaos as the humans struck from every direction at once. His ships were superior individually, but the humans fought as if every vessel was controlled by a single mind. But you know what we learned from all that death and destruction? Chen asked, her voice cutting through the noise of battle. We learned how to win. Thexion's flagship shuddered as human weapons found their mark. These weren't the precise surgical strikes they'd used on the other Council ships. These were weapons designed to kill quickly and efficiently. Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count, his tactical officer reported. The humans are targeting our command vessel specifically. They're trying to break our coordination. Fall back, Thexion ordered. All ships, retreat to hyperspace. But the humans had anticipated this as well. The space around the Council fleet was suddenly filled with some kind of interference that prevented hyperspace jumps. Ships that tried to escape found themselves still in normal space, surrounded by human vessels moving in for the kill. Going somewhere, Admiral? Chen asked. I'm afraid we can't let you leave just yet. We're not finished with our lesson. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, over 2/3 of the Council fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors limped away from Earth, their commanders finally understanding what they had truly been facing. As the last Council ships disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her command vessel and looked out at the debris field that had once been the most powerful fleet in galactic history. All ships, begin rescue operations, she ordered. Enemy survivors take priority. I want every Council crew member who can be saved brought aboard our medical ships. Her communications officer looked confused. Admiral, these are our enemies. Chen turned to him with the expression that mixed exhaustion and determination. No, Lieutenant. These are people who made the mistake of believing their leaders' lies about us. Once they understand what really happened here, They might help us fix this mess their empire has made of the galaxy. She looked back out at the stars where human ships were already preparing for the next phase of the war. Besides, she added quietly, we're going to need all the friends we can get. Because now we have to do something much, 3 months after the Battle of Sol, human fleets arrived at every major council world simultaneously. They didn't come as conquerors burning cities and demanding surrender. They came as liberators, broadcasting messages of freedom to the billions of enslaved species across the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, the Council's capital world, the ruling body had gathered in emergency session for weeks. Reports flooded in from across their empire of human ships appearing in orbit, but not attacking. Instead, they were broadcasting something far more dangerous than weapons: the truth. Citizens of the galaxy, came the message from every human vessel. You have been told that the Council brings peace and order to the stars. You have been told that resistance is futile, that the strong must rule the weak. Today we bring you a different message. You are free. Secretary General Martinez stood in the Council's own chamber now, flanked by human marines who had walked through their impenetrable defenses as if they were paper. The greatest military minds in galactic history had been unable to keep a small diplomatic team out of their most secure facility. Honored counselors, Martinez began, her voice carrying the same amused tone it had held 3 months ago. I believe you wanted to discuss terms of surrender. Counselor Zarthek of the Dominion, the same being who had delivered the original ultimatum to Earth, looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. Many seats were empty now. Some representatives had fled when the human fleets arrived. Others had chosen to join the growing rebellion that was spreading across their former empire. What? What are your demands? Zarthek asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Martinez smiled and produced a datapad from her jacket. Our demands are quite simple, actually. First, the Galactic Council is hereby dissolved. Your authority to rule other species is revoked, permanently. She tapped the datapad and holographic displays filled the chamber, showing footage from across the galaxy. On world after world, the species that the Council had conquered were rising up against their oppressors. But they weren't alone. Human advisors and equipment were helping them organize their new governments. Second, every species you have subjugated will be given the chance to govern itself. We're providing them with the tools and knowledge they need to build their own societies. Counselor Valinsa of the Hegemony stood up, her purple skin flushed with anger. You cannot simply dissolve an empire that has existed for 3,000 years. There will be chaos, civil wars, billions will die. Martinez turned to look at her directly. As opposed to the billions who have already died under your rule, we've seen your records, Counselor. We know exactly how many species you've exterminated, how many worlds you've strip-mined into lifeless rocks. The holographic displays changed to show the Council's own classified files. Entire civilizations wiped out because they refused to surrender. Planets reduced to ash because their inhabitants were considered unfit for servitude. The true scope of the Council's crimes against sentient life. You're worried about chaos? Martinez continued. Good. Chaos is messy and unpredictable, but it's also freedom. Better to die free than live as slaves. Zarthek tried one last desperate argument. You humans cannot police the entire galaxy. Your species numbers in the billions, but there are trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. You will spread yourselves too thin, and when you do, we will return. Martinez laughed, that same laugh that had started this whole war. Police the galaxy? Counselor, I think you still don't understand what's happening here. We're not taking over your empire. We're ending the very concept of galactic empires. She gestured to the displays which now showed human fleets throughout the galaxy. But they weren't occupying planets or establishing military governments. Instead, they were sharing technology, providing aid, and then leaving. We're giving every species the tools they need to defend themselves. Advanced weapons, shield technology, faster-than-light communication systems. When we're done, no single species will ever be able to conquer the galaxy again. The implications of this hit the Council members like a physical blow. The humans weren't just defeating them. They were making their kind of empire impossible for anyone to establish ever again. This is madness, Valinsa declared. Without central authority, without order, the galaxy will tear itself apart. Maybe, Martinez agreed. Or maybe all these species you've been keeping down will surprise you. Maybe they'll build something better than what you gave them. She walked to the center of the chamber, looking up at the massive symbol of the Council that dominated the room. You know what your real crime was, counselors? It wasn't the conquest or the slavery or even the genocide. It was the arrogance. You assumed that because you were strong you had the right to rule. You forgot that strength without wisdom is just brutality. Human Marines began escorting council members from the chamber, not roughly but firmly. Their age of power was over. Wait, Zarthek called out as he was led away. What happens to us? What happens to our species? Martinez paused at the chamber's exit. The same thing that happens to everyone else. You get to choose your own path. Build a democracy, elect a council, establish a monarchy if that's what your people want, but you'll do it on your own world with your own resources ruling only yourselves. And if we refuse, if we try to rebuild our empire, the Secretary General's smile turned cold as deep space. Then you'll discover why every human child learns about something called the Geneva Convention, and why we stopped following it the moment you threatened our world. She left the chamber, leaving the former rulers of the galaxy to contemplate their new reality. Outside, the human fleets were already preparing to depart. Their work here was finished. 6 months later, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Indomitable, watching the stars beyond Nexus Prime. The former capital of the galaxy was now just another world, its people slowly learning how to govern themselves without the power to rule others. Admiral, her communications officer called. We're receiving reports from across the galaxy. The last council holdouts on Veltar Prime have agreed to the new accords. The transition is complete. Chen nodded without turning from the viewport. Out there among the stars, hundreds of species were building new lives, new governments, new hopes. Some would succeed, others would fail, and most would probably struggle for generations to figure out what freedom really meant. But they would do it as equals, not as masters and slaves. Orders, Admiral? The officer asked. Set course for Earth, Chen replied. Our job here is done. As the human fleet began its journey home, a message went out across the galaxy from Earth itself. Secretary General Martinez, speaking from the same podium where she had first laughed at the Council's demands, addressed the free peoples of the stars. Citizens of the galaxy, she began. Today marks the end of the Galactic Council and the beginning of something new. We don't know what you'll build in the ruins of their empire. We don't know if you'll choose democracy or monarchy, capitalism or socialism, war or peace. She paused and smiled, not the cold smile of a conqueror, but the warm smile of someone watching children take their first steps. But we know it will be your choice, and that's all we ever wanted, for everyone to have the right to choose their own destiny among the stars. The message ended, and across the galaxy, billions of beings looked up at the night sky with new eyes. The age of empires was over. The age of freedom had begun, and somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars humanity watched and waited, ready to help if asked, but content to let others find their own way forward. After all, they had learned long ago that the best victories weren't won with weapons, but with the simple belief that everyone deserved the chance to be free. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had intended all along. Harder than winning a battle.